Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. It's your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. And today we're discussing a model that was launched in 2018, discontinued this year, 2020. It is the silver white dial Rolex Oyster Perpetual 39, the 114-300. With this silver white dial, it was only made in 18 and 19 and part of the 2020 model year. So this is already something of a collector's piece. 39 millimeters, it's a larger Oyster Perpetual, or at least it was before the arrival of the 41. The timepiece measures in profile, only 11.2 millimeters thick. It is 47.5 millimeters from lug to lug, and if you include the solid end links across the wrist, it has an absolute distance of 49 millimeters. With a 20 millimeter span between the lug horns. Pop it open and throw it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. You can see it's a nice size. Well balanced, handsome, easily worn. I could recommend it for a wrist as small as 13 and a half, maybe even 13 centimeters circumference. It's flat enough to fit underneath a cuff. And you can see from this over the top shot that the lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist. So too from this down the barrel shot as I roll through the camera angle. Taking a quick look at the bracelet, of course, this is the Oyster Perpetual bracelet. So it's more of an entry-level model, so it features all satin finish externally with the exception of the flanks, which are polished, removable links fixed in place by screws, and you can see that on both sides. The clasp is polished internally, as you can see. It has a beak and a hook, so there's a lift lock system that latches and closes, so you don't just pull it and pop it open. You actually have to lift and unlock it first, so there is a dimension of security there. It has the embossed crown, characteristic of the Oyster Perpetual models, and then you can see internally, the Oyster Perpetual of this generation featured 3 divots drilled inside the clasp. There is no easy link, not at this price point, but you get 3 divots so you can re-anchor the bracelet inside the clasp for tuning. So you can remove links, add links, and then re-anchor in those 3 positions to adjust the size and the fit. Rolling over to the case band. I love that the Oyster Perpetual stuck with the traditional Rolex case profile. This is not the super case. You can see that tumble home, the curvature when viewed end on. You can also see that there's a lovely fluid form to these lugs, and light dances across their curved surface in a way it doesn't across the sheer sides of the sub and the GMT. You can see that the lugs also aren't squared off. They come to a tapered point, and they're satin finished on their hood for contrast. There's a twin lock crown in steel. The watch is 100 meters water resistant instead of the conical bezel we often see on steel Rolex models. Here we have a domed bezel. So this dome gives it a little bit of a bubble back look. And the bubble back, of course, launched in 1933, was the original Oyster Perpetual, the first truly sporting Rolex that combined the Oyster water-resistant case with the Perpetual rotor winding system. That's why they were called bubble backs, to make room for the rotor. This timepiece, of course, is relatively flat. This is what we call the Oyster Perpetual today, and it is the closest living descendant of the original Rolex Sports Hero. This dial, silver white, arrived in 2018, a year that was otherwise dominated by news of the GMT. There were some changes in Oyster Perpetual land, and it's a handsome looking dial with white gold hands, white gold Rolex crown, white gold individual indices that are fully lumed. You can see there's a small black square outboard of each index to animate the outer dial and also make it easier to read seconds and minutes. Now the watch does feature hacking or stop seconds, so you can stop the seconds hand, set the watch to a reference time. It is bidirectional automatic winding with a 48-hour power reserve. It beats a weight at 28,800 vibrations per hour, pivots on 31 joules, and it is shock tolerant. This caliber 3132 is a full balance bridge with a free-sprung index for shock tolerance. It has an overcoil hairspring and 6-position adjustment, not just as a movement, which earns the COSC certificate. Rolex then cases up the movement, and as a full watch, tests it to the tolerance of no worse than -2 + 2 seconds per 24 hours, the basis for Rolex's superlative chronometer claim. It also has a handmade Breguet overcoil hairspring that allows the hairspring to breathe concentrically regardless of its orientation with respect to gravity, which allows the watch to be both accurate and isochronous. And of course, the hairspring is made of a blue oxidized niobium zirconium Rolex calls parachrom blue that is highly anti-magnetic. So it is shock resistant, water resistant, and resistant to magnetism. All of this in a movement that is all Rolex. Heck, the case, the bracelet, the clasp is all Rolex, as Rolex has its own foundry and its own case factory, and it creates its own 904L steel. What is the difference between 904L and 316? The difference is made mainly in corrosion resistance, whereas 316 will eventually corrode if exposed to harmful chemicals and even salt water without subsequent rinsing. You do not even need to rinse this watch after it is exposed to salt. That is one of the many virtues of 90L steel. More capability than you need, but then again, that is what luxury is all about. Reach out to Tim Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. And we're back with the Oyster Perpetual 39.